I was a new attendee. I tried to manage this case knowing what I knew at that moment, especially in emergency medicine when we deal with a lot of uncertainty. We're dealing with not a lot of information. We're piecing things together in the moment as we're also trying to navigate a very busy emergency department. This is one of the busiest emergency department in California. I still remember, I know exactly which room it is, and I can imagine each and every one of you will have similar stories or at least cases where you can picture the patient, you can picture the room, you can picture the team. And so in this case, it was somebody who came in really presenting as sepsis. It was flu season. The patient was vomiting, patient in his 80s, and just really just throwing up. As the workup progresses, it was clear to me that we need to admit the patient. And in that process, I realized that I was going down the routes that eventually was missing a big key pathophysiology. And when things got connected in my mind, when it clicked, I realized that the patient was just a lot sicker. So I was trying to get an MRI and somehow I was able to convince them on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon to get an MRI tech to drive into the hospital, only to find out that the test was actually not the best test to do. Had we done it, it would have given us the diagnosis, but the patient just deteriorated pretty fast. What I was worried was the patient was having a stroke because they just keep on vomiting. Here I was really trying my best to navigate, like, what do I need to do next? I was holding on to hot potato and I'm quickly trying to decide, where can I pass that? Is it the MRI? Is it an X-ray? Is it a CT scan? And the amount of vomiting that he was doing, like, I considered like, maybe this is a cerebellar stroke. You know, the bane of our existence in emergency medicine is you get a lot of tests done, but somehow that urine is not a quick thing to get. And so I was trying to get urine from the patient. And when he went to the bathroom and got us some urine sample, when he came back, he was altered. And it was then that click that I mentioned earlier happened. I was like, this is not stroke, because now the patient is just confused and now hypotensive, and I was worried about aortic dissection. And so then I called the radiologist that I just begged to get an MRI tech to drive in. I was like, I'm so sorry. I know you're calling for us now to go to MRI. I think this patient actually is having dissection. I'm going to cancel the MRI and I'm going to get this CT scan. The patient went to CT scan, and all of a sudden I hear code blue. I am Dr. Alvarez, and this is Critical Conversations.
Do you love medicine? Real medicine. Medicine unfiltered, unpredictable, and sometimes unfair. Well, this is the podcast for you. Because whether you're already in the chaos or training to join it, you'll hear the stories that don't quite make the textbooks. Because in the ER, there are no scripts, just real cases, real physicians, and real perspectives. This is Critical Conversations, medicine, policy, and the frontline experience.
Last time we literally got together was a long time ago. And there's been a lot of holidays. There's been Juneteenth and 4th of July. So
lots of fireworks getting on my nerves, seriously.
You know what's crazy about fireworks? They're supposed to be reminiscent of bombs.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
think
why
I knew.
PTSD and dogs don't like that stuff.
When you really think about that, you're like, what? That's what it's supposed to be about?
That was the original intention? Or that's just
that's the intention of fireworks, is to kind of give you bombs bursting in air, type of.
I like them less now.
I've never liked
them less.
Isn't that crazy?
once you've been an EMT and you've seen somebody blow their hand off with a firework, you don't look at them the same. I promise you. It's not cute. And I don't understand where people get the fun from that. Have you guys ever done fireworks?
I have.
Yeah.
Wow.
One time, the sparklers or whatever,
Well,
right? So at one time I grabbed it here instead of at the bottom, and I thought it was a new one, and it was one that had already went out and just burnt my entire hand. And after that, I was like, you know what? Fireworks may not be.
He said, nope, I'm making a decision.
May not be my thing. And I was young. I was probably like 6 or 7.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
I was
crazy.
like, maybe this is not my thing. But I did become like the person who like lights them and then like throws them. I was that person. I actually will still do that today, actually. No, I think
They were over here at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's not those regular, like, pretty ones. It's the ones that sound like the whole block's about to blow up. Go home.
it's so funny. Cities that make them illegal, like LA made them illegal, and you should see these videos of LA where all these fireworks are just shooting up in the air like all across the city, even though they're supposed to be illegal. Here, ours are kind of, we call them safe and sane or whatever, where they only are supposed to be on the ground and they don't go off the ground. Like nothing takes off the ground, but
So
man,
what does it do? How does it get in the air? What doesn't take off the ground?
it's just like, it may be like a fountain and then it just goes.
Well,
It's not like a bottle rocket or a Roman candle or any of those types of things. It's just, it has to stay on the ground. But that's in our county. Now, the county next door,
it's
fireworks.
popping over there.
So that's what people do. They'll go to that county, get all the stuff, drive back, and then you'll see people in your neighborhood shooting them up in the air. They're on the Las Vegas Strip. It's
Do they
crazy.
get in trouble for that?
You're supposed to. Like, for example, I think it was like something like 400 calls. It was something crazy. And then something caught on fire. Like a building caught on fire because of it,
That happened to us. A building next to us caught on fire when they did fireworks in the alley. And the only reason why we knew is because our cat woke us up.
Everyone needs a cat.
Cats are so underrated. People always love dogs, and I love dogs, but cats, when you get the love of a cat, you know you've made it because they're very selective. I gotta say.
You all know I love cats.
And that's exactly why I don't like
Love.
Oh my
What?
gosh.
This is because they think they're human.
They
They
think they're better than human, actually.
Yeah, you are your
Yes,
pet.
that's
You're not your pet. Yeah.
Yeah, they think we're the pets. So.
Yeah.
I actually have 3 dogs, but I'm definitely a dog person. I've just never been a cat person. I shouldn't say I hate them. Definitely not what I would go to if I had to pick a pet.
So who's taking the dog outside when it's raining or snowing?
That's me. I'll easily do
Every
that.
time I call Joe, he is outside with them dogs. And they're fighting. And I feel like they're in a gang. They're always fighting. And he's always just like, you go over there, you go over there. He always walks with those dogs.
Yeah, that's why I would get in trouble. If it's raining, you're not going outside. You also can't use the bathroom here. If it's snowing, you're not going outside. You also cannot use the bathroom in here.
You should have saw me when I lived in Chicago. I had both my dogs there, and I was like, my dogs are not used to going down an elevator, then out the door, and then you open the door and it's snow. They were like, what is this?
Can I tell you, I've had cats and dogs, and I love how dogs just unconditionally love you, but I love gaining the love of cats. But me and my cat have a very complicated relationship. Like, he was a jerk. Like, I would go to work and he would be like, acting like he was going to be okay. I come home from work and my family's just like, yeah, he was hissing at us. He was trying to scratch everybody. And it's because they were trying to get him off my bed. He knows he's not supposed to be on my bed. So I come home and he's purring like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, what did you do today? Why you meet me at the door purring? And apparently he was an emotional terrorist the whole day.
See, and I think depending on, if it's a cat or a dog or whatever type of pet you like, that really helps with your wellness overall, right?
Definitely.
Because, you can, if you're walking your dog, that means you walk more. Or you guys tell me, I don't know what you do with cats. I guess cuddle with cats, maybe.
No, because they do this thing where they're just like, they come up to you, they want to cuddle, and then you touch them for too long. They're like, get off me. Get your hands off me.
helps a little bit. I got a stroller for my cat, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was
It's just every day is something new with you. I
they're
can't.
always inside. They never get to look outside. And I don't want something to... So I had a cat that had a club paw. So I was like, I can't let you outside. You can't fight. You have to stand on your, like, normal paw and fight with the club paw.
Oh, he's not a street cat. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, I just get him a stroller. He hated it. He would not sit down. He was panting and walking around in circles. And I was like, you know what? Let me just take you back inside.
Listen, I hate that you got a stroller.
I'm just still stuck on the cat stroller part. You think you know people.
I actually want to get one of those backpacks that, it's clear in the back so they can be behind you and look around. Or like a carrier, like a baby carrier before a cat.
No, stop.
Yeah.
Because if I see you walking around with a cat strapped to your back like they do those babies, I'm gonna lose it.
They would have such a good time. It would be an adventure for them. They don't really watch TV. They don't have any friends in there. I go out to work. They need like entertainment.
You're Caribbean. You should not be doing this nonsense.
No.
I feel like people do that with dogs, though. They have the little characters or whatever.
You have to up your cat content consumption.
You do.
There's so much out there.
That's a cool.
So the last time we were together, we missed a lot of things. I did something fun on Juneteenth. I actually went to an art show, which was pretty dope. A shout out to my brother Hakeem, who had his art presentation here in Las Vegas. It was really cool, really good to see. A lot of good people. Over like 200 people showed up. It was crazy. And, I kind of started thinking about wellness as it relates to not just eating better or exercising or walking or whatever, but wellness is a creative outlet. So whether it's art, music, or writing, or just having something that helps you kind of express yourself.
Growing up, I had a lot of outlets like that because I swore, I think I convinced myself I was supposed to be famous in this life. And so I was trying out for things like, this is probably going to age me a little bit, the Mickey Mouse Club, Kids Incorporated. I thought I was supposed to be on TV singing and dancing. So I used to sing, I used to dance, I used to take ballet and tap. I used to play the piano. I used to write short stories. I even won an award for one, actually. I stopped doing that. I used to paint. I used to love watching old Bob Ross videos and just painting with him. Yeah, happy mistakes. So I do a lot of stuff, which I do not do now because I feel like med school beat that out of me. It was just like, not have time for anything but me.
As healthcare professionals, we constantly are encouraging our patients to take care of themselves, but sometimes we're not that great at taking that advice on our own. But today, we have a guest that has spent a lot of time thinking about physician wellness, resilience, and how we can continue caring for others without losing ourselves in the process.
Yeah, so Dr. Alvarez, my first time meeting him was at a national conference where he put on all these amazing wellness sessions. And, he's very big on focusing on humanizing physicians, especially in such a high stakes environment such as emergency medicine, and finding that wellness and life balance. And he has the credentials to back it up because he's the director of well-being at Stanford Emergency Medicine, just to name one thing out of the hundreds that he does in this field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I feel like we have a lot of discussions about wellness, and there are never too many of them because as long as burnout exists, these conversations are still valid. I think sometimes that we could even feel like paying attention to our well-being is almost a sign of weakness because we're supposed to be able to power through everything and stay up for 24 hours and not need to sleep. But really there is a lot of value in slowing down. I also feel like there's value in finding what works for you. Not everyone wants to sleep, not everyone wants to travel. Some people may really just like to sit and watch a movie, like you said, Ty, or some people just like to, spend some time with family. I think wellness is a broad term that sometimes can be narrowed down to one specific group of activities. And it's not fair because it needs to really be something that provides wellness to you.
I agree.
So let's get into this conversation with Dr. L.A. Alvarez.
Okay, let's do it. This is Critical Conversations. Let's get into it. We're so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much. And I got to say this before you start talking. I want our listeners to know you're not this generic wellness cheerleader. Dr. Alvarez, listeners, he's really embedded in research, in design, in institutional mechanisms, pushing real change in EM. And he has credibility. Our talk here is going to be real. It's going to be open. By the case, you can kind of see that's the direction we're going today, because this is the conversation that really needs to be had. So I want to start off with this first question for you. If we had to kind of lay out the current burnout landscape in emergency medicine, how dire is it exactly? How real is burnout in emergency medicine? We hear about it, but what is the real deal?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think when you just talk about numbers, emergency medicine consistently ranks as one, if not the top three, specialty with the highest burnout in all of medicine. So that means at least every other person that you sit with when you're practicing emergency medicine have signs and symptoms of burnout. So what does that really mean? It means that we're more likely to leave the specialty. We're more likely to leave medicine in general. And if we stay, we're more likely to make mistakes because of burnout. We're more likely to test more, order more studies. So the cost of care actually increases. We're more likely to spend more time charting because we're worried we're going to make mistakes. Or we're more likely to just not be nice with each other, with our patients, with our colleagues. And at Stanford, there was a study, this is pre-pandemic. So that tells you, like, with inflation and all of that, like it'll be more. But for every physician that leaves because of burnout, at Stanford, it cost us about $500,000 to $2 million. Not just in the productivity, when we're not really performing at our best, but also because of the recruitment efforts to hire that person, the onboarding, it doesn't even include like case that happens because they're burnt out. So when you have like bad outcomes or litigation, that can sometimes increase because, again, you're just so worried about what you're doing. And so the cost of burnout is very real for a specialty that's fairly new. Many of us are already thinking about like side jobs, like what else could I do? And people are even looking into like retiring early. Those are all not bad things, by the way. But I think what's so important is that people are making decisions because of scarcity, because they fear that they're stuck. And I think that if you're making decisions to like, I want to retire early because I really love this job, but I also want to explore other things, those are all wonderful aspirations. But sadly, I think the stories that I'm hearing is that people are making decisions because they've just had enough. And I wish that people can find that sense of professional fulfillment, that sense of meaning in the work that they do, and continue practicing emergency medicine in different ways, right? It doesn't have to be being in a county hospital and an academic hospital doing research or teaching, but just doing something that you really, truly love and wake up in the morning and look forward to do.
And what do you feel are some of those kind of systemic failures that are glaring, that kind of perpetuates burnout in emergency medicine? What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough too. So I want to be cautious here because I know you mentioned earlier about like a broken system. I don't disagree with our system being broken, but I think the solution is not to create this us versus them, that the institution is so broken that like we are suffering and we're victims of it. I think it's important also that like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago for me when I was applying to medical school, I wanted to become a doctor. I wanted to practice in a place where I can be there for the most vulnerable, right? And so it's important for us to recognize, and I learned this from the Mission Critical Teams Institute, that we chose a hard path. And so it's not that like we were forced to do this. I think it's important to also acknowledge that many of us right now feel perhaps that we are forced to do something that we don't really agree with. Like I didn't sign up for this kind of emergency medicine practice that we're in now, when we're seeing patients in the waiting room and dispoing them and making decisions that we know we would never have done for our family members. I think we have to separate that. But I think that when we're thinking about solutions and thinking about the problem and the solutions attached to it, we have to consider a world where we can work with our leaders to actually make change. And I can tell you the different initiatives that we have at Stanford. I have zero budget to my name, but a lot of the work that we're able to do, some of them like cost millions of dollars. really focuses on alignment. Can we look at the problem in such a way that it makes sense? It's we understand it better so that the solution just naturally comes up as opposed to just like the plug and play. Oh, you're feeling burnout. Here's pizza. Like that does not actually solve problems. But it feels good sometimes when we're doing things just to kind of put a patch into it. So I think having dedicated teams, dedicated infrastructures to really understand the problem, to surface the problem in such a way that we can talk about this, the ugly parts of it, and also have the space to talk about it and not worry that I'm going to get in trouble for something that I say. I think is probably a common root to the many of the challenges that we're experiencing because we're so siloed. And it's not because we don't care. In fact, we care so much that we silo ourselves into a super specialty. Like you mentioned that there's a wellness fellowship. But my goal with that fellowship and the fellows that I've gotten to work with is that we get to apply this design thinking, we get to apply this emergency medicine mindsets that we can handle things and also that we're going to be able to reach out to ask for help. And also we need that dedicated time and space to really look at problems and not just to do what we normally do in the emergency departments. We just make it work. And because we're so good at just making it work, the cumulative effects of that is actually inundating. It's so hard, right? Because in my mind, like maybe you're just able to just like see a patient and like say like, oh yeah, that was dissection. For me, it was like, but it didn't present like that. And so we question ourselves, we question our decisions. But how can we create spaces where we can question our decisions in a way that it also allows us to maintain our sense of dignity? That we are trained, we work really hard to get to where we are. We have wonderful training to actually give us the right competence to practice emergency medicine at the best of our abilities.
Dr. Alvarez, I love that you mentioned the idea that this is a career that we've all walked in with our eyes wide open into.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've always had a problem with is how do you differentiate between the symptoms of burnout and
Yeah.
what's just a traditional side effect of just being a part of such a rigorous career?
Well, burnout is very real. So I'm not discounting that at all. I think differentiating it is having that self-awareness of, man, I'm not as happy with the accomplishments that I'm doing. When I'm walking and talking to my patient, I feel like I'm just a robot, like that depersonalization, right? And just like emotional exhaustion, that not being able to even feel or that numbness that we feel sometimes when you're like, I should be crying for this. Like this is horrible. But yet somehow like I'm so detached. But in emergency medicine, it's also interesting because we train ourselves to actually compartmentalize. It's actually helpful for us to compartmentalize. I cannot be bawling my eyes out when I'm doing a resuscitation on a kid who's dying because I need to be present and focus on the mechanics of resuscitation and less about the emotion in that moment. And so how do you then find balance? I think for me, it's that self-awareness. And so it's also harder. So I'm normalizing because this event that we're doing is for residents and students, figuring out whether this is just a struggle of training, right? Because training is not supposed to be easy. If it's easy, then everybody should be doing it. And so the struggle actually is important, but how much is too much when you're like, it is just overwhelming. I cannot even like go to the bathroom. I cannot even like eat my lunch because I worry that I'm going to miss that call or somebody's going to yell at me or somebody is going to like insult me when I call them to admit a patient, right? All of those things you have to question like, am I struggling because it's a me problem or am I struggling because it's an environment problem? It's no different than when talking about like the imposter phenomenon because that's a very common thing in medicine. In fact, imposter phenomenon is so common that we have the highest imposterism. Doctors have the highest imposterism compared to any other workforce in the country, according to one study. But when you talk about imposterism, imposter phenomenon, or some people call imposter syndrome, I hate the word syndrome because it's not a disease. It's just a phenomenon that actually happens to so many of us. Part of that is because of our own self-esteem. Maybe we're not as confident enough. Maybe we doubt ourselves, right? It's actually very common to feel this during transitions. I go through this every time I transition into a new role, when I work, when I meet with different people. But there's also the structural component to that. When a system is so set up to like question you every single time you present something, when you're trying to admit a patient and the first reaction is like, why does this patient need to be admitted? Like, did you not think of this? And the tone of that conversation is like belittling you or questioning your training. Like that's not imposterism. That's just being mean, right? And so then how do you then differentiate that? And for me, I think there's a few ways. One is I need to be kind to myself so that I can accept my own areas of imperfections and also the opportunity for me to grow. But also I need to be able to talk it through with other people. Am I the bad guy here? Am I like the one that is terrible? Am I like whatever names that we have in our mind? Because we are so good at that, actually. We're so good at beating ourselves up. But having that clarity from somebody else to mirror that, like, hey, Ty, that's not a you thing. This is just like, we're just not nice here right now because I don't know, for whatever reason, either like the specialty is just known to not be nice or the work compression, we're so overworked that I have not slept yet and I need to sleep. And now like they're asking me to like manually disimpact the patient, right? Or whatever else that needs to happen. Maybe it's even to just like, can you just rewrite that prescription again? Because it was sent to the wrong pharmacy. I was like, that was not my that I shouldn't somebody have fixed that before you asked me to write a prescription? So these inefficiencies, the pebbles in our shoes, kind of like impact the way that we're just working every single day. And so it's a great question to ask. Like, when do you cross the line of being burnt out versus the system is just broken? And I think part of that is that having that self compassion, to have the self awareness, to know that like this is the small part of me part, but this is the bigger part of the institution. But most importantly, can I say something? Do I have the autonomy to say that this is not right? The sense of belonging that I can say this and people have my back. In the sense of competence that I can grow and be better at this. If it's truly just my problem, if it's just my deficiency, my learning or knowledge deficiency.
You talked about how emergency medicine docs really just make it work. That really resonated with me in a way that I wonder how many people who just have a personality of making it work is drawn to emergency medicine.
For sure.
So as they're making it work in their personal life, trying to make sure bills are paid, right? Make sure the dog is fed, make sure at that clinical, I'm at that, hospital at this time. I've studied, I've read over cases. I wonder how many people out there that are listening are thinking about, all those things that they're making work right now, and that could possibly be contributing to their overall burnout.
For sure, right? Because there is. I have many ways of addressing this, but the first thing that came to mind is actually this notion of the Stanford duck. Again, they call it a syndrome, but I think it's just a phenomenon, the Stanford duck phenomenon. And I've shared this a lot, and so if you've heard it, forgive me, but I think it's a great analogy. Imagine you're looking at a beautiful pond, right? And I know, Joseph, there's probably not a lot of ponds with like swans and ducks in Vegas, but just maybe in like, I don't know, one of the nice hotels. And you're looking at them and they're just floating serenely. And you want to take a picture because it's just so beautiful, right? Working at Stanford is like that for me. And that's why it's a known thing, because people talk about this. Because when you look at people like that, when you look at the swans and the beautiful ducks, they're so perfectly like in place. But what we don't realize and what we don't talk about is that under the water, we're actually just fluttering, struggling to just keep afloat. And so why don't we just talk about that? Because what you're describing is that right now we're just so busy keeping it together to create this semblance that we got it, that we're performing. But in reality, like we're just like one case away or one criticism away or one scenario away from just losing it. And maybe sometimes it's our family who causes that. Maybe sometimes it's your car not like turning on time. I remember I had this beat up car when I was in residency, and I was like, I cannot miss my shift, right? Or maybe it's a subway that was just late. Whatever that thing is, right? That you never planned, because in our mind, we're just like, we're working in a place of scarcity. There's not enough hours and minutes in the day that we just like try to do so much to prove to everybody that we're just as good as everybody else. And then one thing falls apart. And that when that thing falls apart, everything else falls apart. But then when you look around, I was like, but everybody's floating serenely in a pond. Why is it just me? Right? But I just want to say this because I know for sure, because I work in this environment, everybody, every single one of us are struggling, be it at work or at home. Nobody has the perfect life where everything just works. And if they are, please connect me with them. I will interview them. I'll learn some skills from them, because it's also probably not only that it's not real, but it's so hard to achieve and attain that it sets this very unrealistic expectation for us to just show up, right? It's I was meditating earlier, and the app said that when you let go of perfection, you can just be good. And I love that, because then it's less about just like striving for something that I cannot reach. I can just be me, right? But there's also the corollary to that we can also just be kind to ourselves, kind to each other, because everybody's actually struggling one way or another.
From policy shifts and patient care to medical breakthroughs and healthcare shakeups, emergency medicine never stands still. But we're taking a quick break from the conversation so that we can catch you up on what's trending across medicine and healthcare right now. Welcome to Critical Conversations Frontline Triage, our rapid assessment of the biggest stories shaping medicine, healthcare, and the frontline. We don't just cover the headlines, we triage them. Every story gets one designation. You have waiting room, fast track, straight to the back, or trauma bay. Let's get into today's headlines. So our first headline is how gene editing is changing sickle cell. For the first time ever, gene editing therapies like CASP-R are giving some patients with sickle cell disease the possibility of living free from painful crises. In the news recently, there was a young man that got cured of sickle cell through this therapy and was able to actually become a pilot. So, what do you guys think about this conversation? How important is it to you?
Really, before public health school, I'll admit I fully didn't appreciate how devastating sickle cell was. A colleague of mine, I remember now, she's the Dr. Melissa Creary, but she was really passionate about this work. She had sickle cell herself. And she really opened up my eyes to how disproportionately this disease affects the Black community and how historically underfunded it's been. Then working in healthcare, I saw just how often these patients rely on the emergency department. I also had a close friend and fraternity brother whose wife passed away from the complications of sickle cell. So this story is really, really personal to me. And really what excites me is we're no longer just talking about treating pain crises. We're talking about changing the disease itself. And if I had to put on my healthcare administrator hat, it immediately starts me to think about access. This is trauma bed.
I'm going to have to say the same. Actually have a close friend whose son has sickle cell. And there are a lot of moments that do not actually take these patients to the emergency department. They're dealt with at home, but they're still very painful. And it's something that is not only devastating for the patient, it's devastating for the caregivers, because there's nothing that you can do. It's always somewhere between, should I go to the hospital or am I overreacting? Yeah. You're going to have to learn how to gauge their pain just based on how they look, because they may learn to power through things that they probably should take a break through. So I'm going to say trauma bay.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you. I really want to echo what JD said, is that is it going to be accessible to everybody, especially the community that it affects the most? So trauma bay definitely, but looking out to make sure that they make it accessible to the people who truly need it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so our next headline, are we closer to an HIV vaccine? Scientists are reporting there's promising results from an experimental HIV vaccine that's helping the immune system produce broadly neutralizing antibodies against multiple HIV strains. It's not a cure and it's not ready for widespread use yet, but many researchers believe we're closer than ever to an effective vaccine. So what says the crew?
My public health side really immediately lit up because we've spent decades trying to develop an effective vaccine. So it's exciting to see some progress. At the same time, though, I think we want to be careful not to oversell it. It's just promising research, and that's kind of an important designation. I think we have to separate scientific process from clinical reality. So we're closer than we've ever been, but we're not at the finish line yet. So for me, I would put this kind of straight to the back.
I do have similar sentiments. I also think it's really important for us to look at how people receive things like HIV care and how people receive things like PrEP. The work is very important. There's still a certain degree of denial that comes with an HIV diagnosis. There are some people that are still hesitant about taking things like PrEP, which is available. My only concern is how are we going to sell this to the people that it would actually benefit, and how do we make it accessible? For that reason, I would put this in fast track. I think there's still a lot of work to be done on it, aside from the actual vaccine, because we've seen things that are helpful, but the community doesn't receive it. So are people going to receive it well? People are so wary of vaccines right now. Is there some people that are actually going to take it? Are people feeling more hopeful about healthcare and vaccines right now? Those are my main concerns, aside from, of course, a successful vaccine.
Yeah.
So fast track for me.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you. I don't really have any more points on top of what you already said. Definitely agree with that. Okay. Headline 3 is about Alzheimer's care. They've come up with 2 different things. One, a new blood test that can actually detect Alzheimer's earlier. Now, they've actually found a treatment that targets the tau protein responsible for damaging brain cells. So that sounds promising. What do you guys think?
I think straight to the back. At least straight to the back, borderline trauma bait, because it's really a devastating disease that has such a variable progress. Like, you don't know. Sometimes someone may be stable for like a year. Sometimes it may progress very quickly. And I think that it not only puts a lot of strain on caregivers, but it's a lot of strain on the individual to constantly be confused, and you can see a face, but you can't recognize it, or just having to be put into like a long-term care facility because no one knows if you're going to get up and open the door at night and wander off. It's a safety hazard. Definitely straight to the back, borderline trauma bait.
Joe? Yeah, this one is also personal for me because my grandmother was affected before she passed away. And I honestly think almost everyone knows someone who's been impacted by it, either directly or through someone they loved. What's interesting, living here in Las Vegas, we're fortunate to have the Cleveland Clinic, Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health, really doing this incredible work in Alzheimer's research and brain health. So if we were able to diagnose patients earlier and slow the progression of the disease, even, modestly, that means more quality time for families. Sometimes giving families more time together to prepare. That's just as meaningful, I think, as a treatment itself. So for me, I'm going to say straight to the back for this one.
Okay, guys, that's this week's Frontline Triage, the conversation shaping emergency medicine beyond the hospital walls. If you want to stay ahead of what's impacting EON's Frontline in real time, follow us on @CriticalConvos on all social platforms, or find our link tree at Critical Conversations Podcast, where we keep tracking these developments between episodes and breaking down what they mean for emergency medicine. We're not just covering emergency medicine, we're shaping the conversations that move it forward. Now let's get back to the interview.
So, Dr. Alvarez, practically speaking, this journey to becoming an attending is actually a very long race. You have all this high school that you hate waking up to go to. Then you have undergrad. Then you have medical school. Then you have residency.
Yeah.
How do we pace ourselves, prioritize our mental health, and maintain good work-life balance while also being, of course, competitive? You can't get into residency without having a competitive application. It's hard to get a good job without having a competitive CV. How do we find that balance?
Well, if you know me well enough, you would know that I barely got into medical school because my MCAT was average. If you know me well enough, you would know that I did not get into Stanford for medical school or residency. I was automatically rejected because my USMLE score, I didn't fail, but I barely passed for step 1. And if you know me well enough, these are just common narratives for folks who are historically underrepresented in medicine, or for folks who are first in their family to go through medical school. And I'm not saying this to excuse myself. I'm sharing this because I'm telling you that it can be done, but it doesn't need to be done by hurting other people. I think, though, what we do terribly in the system is that we expect people to have the perfect scores. Like me getting a B plus in organic chemistry would mean that I'm not going to be competitive enough. And so then I would struggle really hard to prioritize that. But also, I need to be president of this and then research. Don't get me started. If you know me well enough, you would know that I did not get published until maybe just a year before the pandemic started. Right. So even though, like, Joseph, you're very generous with introducing me, a lot of my work actually just develops when I started working at Stanford because now I'm surrounded with people who do these kinds of stuff. And I'm like, well, if they're doing it, I probably should learn how to do that as well. But that required a lot of kindness. And so you ask about like, what does that mean? It just means that for me, when I'm choosing things, and it's a lot harder, I think, earlier on when it feels like you don't have a lot of choices, and it feels like you just kind of have to follow the strict regimen of high school to college to medical school, that linear things, right? But I've been open to this idea of nonlinear breakthroughs lately. My career just in the past year has taken off into so many wonderful directions, something that I never would have considered, never would have thought. And some of them because like somebody got sick or somebody sponsored me to do something, right? Like I could not have predicted that. But I can tell you now, my calendar, when I look at it, including this, what I'm doing right now, right? I chose to do this. I get to choose now what I want to do because whenever I say yes to things, it has to mean a lot for me. Does it does it serve me personally? Is it good for me? I learned this, by the way, from Dr. Esther Chu. Well, before she says yes or when she says no to things, she says like, you ask yourself three things. Is it good for me? Is it good for my boss? Right? Like, of course, if your boss asks you to do something, you have to consider that very seriously. And is it good for my advancements? Does it actually serve me to be a better version of me in the career that I've chosen? And if it's 3 out of 3, then that's great. But I know many of us are given ask or being voluntold, and it's probably 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. And I can guarantee if it's 1 out of 3, you're not going to stay with that. In fact, you're going to hate that. In fact, you're probably going to resent the person that gave you that. 2 out of 3 is going to be a lot of work. And even 3 out of 3 is a lot of work. And so now I've actually added a fourth thing that I've learned here at Stanford. It's looking at my calendar. Can I actually fit it in my calendar right now if I have to do this right now? And if not, which of these things can I let go in order for me to fit this 3 out of 3 thing? Which means that the other 2 out of 3s that I've said yes to before because I was not confident enough or I did not had the opportunity to say no, now I can say like, hey, 2 out of 3 is no longer priority. I need to now make space for my 4 out of 4. And so I need to pass on that 2 out of 3 because also we're looking at it from that single-minded way of it's not good for me. But what I've learned over the years is that what's not good for me may be like something that another person may love to do, right? I love quality improvement. I really do. And I know many of my colleagues are like, why do you love that? That is such a pain, right? And so just I think finding that alignment, which means I need to be clear with my own core values, what I care about as a person, what I care about deep inside. And if I can find alignment in that, in the 3 out of 3s, then I will make time for that.
And I really like that because sometimes we take on all this stuff, president of this, doing this and that. It really just causes you sometimes more headaches than it does growth. And the whole purpose of those things is to have this growth for yourself.
Yes, and if I can qualify that, I don't want you to feel bad for doing all of these things. I did all of those things as well because number one, I really enjoyed it. But also I thought that was what you needed to do to get into medical school, to get into residency, right? Because again, people make up all of these things. And so we're not as good with highlighting what we're really good at because we try to fit ourselves into whatever peg or hole that other people have designed for us. And so for me, when I became an assistant program director at Stanford, I asked, how many of me did we reject because of a standardized test? Right? Because they recruited me. I didn't want to work for Stanford. In fact, I specifically avoided Stanford when I was looking for a job. But then when I got this, and when I worked at the county hospital that I was affiliated with Stanford, I did not even know that it was affiliated with Stanford. They were like, "Ooh, he loves his job. He's very excited." Like, and you know me, like I was like, I have a lot of energy. I don't even drink coffee. Like I'm all energy without coffee. And so they wanted me to give a tour to the candidates, and I'm like, "You want me to give a tour to the program to recruit people to this program that rejected me?" And they're like, "Yeah, well, you just highlight like the county." I was like, "Oh, I love the county." So I was like, "I'll sell it to anybody." And so then after that, they like the year after, they was, "Hey, would you like to read applications?" I was like, "You want me to read the applications of the people that would apply for this program that like you rejected me? So like, how would I know? Like, what do you want? Because like you clearly rejected me." And so they, I mean, I really did ask those questions, and then they were like, "No, I think you're going to be good at it." And then like 4 years later, it's like, "Hey, we have an opening as an assistant program director. Would you like to be an assistant program director?" And I was like, "You want me? I have zero training to be an assistant. Like I'm a clinician. Like I teach bedside stuff." And they did a national search, and they hired me, right? And I struggled because I was like, this is a completely new world for me. And of course, what I then did was I asked for them to give me the right training to be good at my job. And so I'm not saying that don't do all those leadership stuff, don't do all of these things to because they're not helpful. I'm saying like choose the things that actually makes you happy with your work, but find ways to align that with what people are looking for. That's why programs like Stanford have the holistic review because, to be honest, like I'm very proud that like I think we've been doing that for 3, 4 years. We're one of the first in the country to have step one and step two completely pass fail because of that simple conversation. How many of me did we reject because of a standardized test? Right. And we didn't lower the bar. We actually made the bar higher because then we started looking at things like, do you have a patent? Do you have like, tell us more about your leadership skills. Were you just like the president? You didn't do anything other than just like have a name of president, but did you actually do something? Did you leave a legacy in the program? So we started really looking into what it means like to be a leader, what it means like to do community service, what it means like to advance the community.
So, Dr. Alvarez, I want to hop back to your case for a second
Sure.
because your patient's in CT and you hear the cold blue call over the intercom. What are you feeling at this point?
I'm getting goosebumps because I'm feeling essentially what I felt then, and I feel this every time I share the story. I screwed up. I missed that, and I was right in the end, but it took me a while to get to that end. And then when that patient coded, I asked for the patient to be brought to the ED so that we can resuscitate because I'm like, I can run to the CT scanner, but I won't have all the resources that I need. And so that quick decision making was what was I leaned into. I was like, bring the patient back, we'll resuscitate him. And it was like a mega code. He went into torsade, he went into this and that. And I was running a trauma at that time. So I had a trauma surgeon next to me. Even as a trauma surgeon, I was like, what if we do a thoracotomy? And he's like, what do you want me to do with the heart and the aorta? I was like, good point. We really tried so many different things, including pericardial centesis, and in the end, the patient died. And and that's probably not a big surprise for you in the audience, but I'll tell you what happened next, which for me catalyzed what I pretty much do now, and how I remind myself when really tough things, challenging things happen to us. You can imagine my hands were shaking after like running the resuscitation, and I was all over the place. And this is again one of the busiest emergency department in California, and definitely the busiest in the Bay Area. And I couldn't focus. I had other active patients that I didn't even know like what happened to. Did they have a CT scan? Did they get what? I was so lost. But then a colleague of mine who is now one of my bestest of friends in emergency medicine, Dr. Mifal Mitarai, took my sign out. She just walked in and she heard, and she's like, "Hey, I heard you had a really tough case. How are you doing?" And she saw I was just really like I was still like literally the patient just died like less than like half an hour before. And she's like, "Oh my God, like don't worry about any of your other patients. I will follow all your notes. I'll just see them again and take care of them. And finish whatever you need to do with this patient that just died. Talk to their family, whatever you need to do. Just take care of yourself and just go home because yeah, I know how this feels, and that was it. And I don't know what happened after that night. I know that I spoke with the family. I sat down with them. I shared with them the outcome and what happened. I know that I really was struggling to even leave the hospital because I was going home alone and trying to figure out like the shoulda, coulda, woulda. And this is like an hour of a drive away. And so that hour of shoulda, coulda, woulda is not really helpful. To fast forward now, one of my the wellness fellows actually developed this 4-step plan on diffusing. How do you run a diffusion? Because we didn't have this debriefing that happened. It was just me that kind of just like, all right, I guess I'm going home and manage that shoulda, coulda, woulda. Now this is just like part of our deal at Stanford. Like when bad things happen, or even great things, so that we're celebrating. The nurses would ask, like, "Hey, can we talk about this case?" And when we talk about the case, it's less about like what could we have done better, right? Because it's really hurtful to ask me like, what could you like the patient just died, like I am blaming myself for this, but instead now we ask things like, how are you sitting with this? How is this impacting you right now? What did you see? What questions do you have? So that we can clarify from different points of view and in a rightly facilitated way so that when we each go home, the nurses, the techs, the residents, we can all go home that we really tried our best. That, yeah, of course, there's going to be a formal review, and that's good because then we can prevent this from happening again. But also we need to take care of each other. We need to take care of our team, and we need to take care of ourselves. And so for me, what I've gotten from that is I share this story of that case of that patient because it's my way of honoring him. It's my way of honoring his family because we, each of us, will make mistakes. Bad things happen, whether it's actually a mistake or not, because I think this is actually a truly difficult case. But bad things happen despite our best efforts. But how we learn from that, how we teach others from those mistakes can really create meaning in our work. And in fact, that's actually one of the first time that I felt this sense of purpose in my role. I started giving grand rounds about the title of this grand rounds was Rookie Mistakes, things I learned after residency. The things that happened as an attending that I've seen, because these things happen, right? It doesn't end with residency. It doesn't end with getting a B+ in organic chemistry.
Let's say in 5 years from now, where do you really see this conversation around burnout, wellness, mental health, if you will, in EM? And what do you think it'll take for us to kind of get there?
It's a great question because he asked me if I have the magic wand to just like in a perfect parallel world and I get all the resources in the world, what would that look like? I have a special interest in high performance teams. So I've been looking into like how Olympians would do this, how military folks would do this, and every year I'm honored and fortunate to be invited to the Mission Critical Teams Institute Summit, their annual summit. And this past year it was at the FDNY, and you have like the military folks there, you have like the sports teams there, even though I don't really understand ball sports, and all these like elite teams. And what is clear is that they have resources to have coaches. Like they have people that actually like helps them understand, make meaning for things. Like imagine like you're like that famous basketball player and like everybody's watching you and it's like, I don't know, like towards like the last 2 minutes and like you're shooting probably the last 30 seconds and you're shooting the ball and you missed it. But then somehow your team caught the ball again and you have like 15 seconds to make it work. How you handle yourself mentally in that last 15 seconds is going to make a difference in how you're going to perform. If you think that you suck and you shouldn't be there, you're going to do awful. But if you think you're like, well, I did my best, it like landed somewhere else, I got the ball now, I'm going to shoot it the way that I have been shooting it because I practice and I have like great training. I have all these people rooting for me. Your chances of like getting that ball to the right spot is a lot high. Clearly, I don't know ball sports, and my analogy is really off here. But I hope you understood that, like how we see ourselves, how kind we are to ourselves, how quick we are to quickly like reset is so important because in emergency medicine we deal with stress all the time. Each and every one of us in emergency medicine have our own graveyards that only you and I would know. That patient that I described with you in room 17, I know exactly that room. I know exactly the color of the room. I know exactly the temperature in the room when I walked in. I'm getting goosebumps right now, right? But nobody else will know that. But I hope that each and every one of us will have the time to reflect, honor those people, honor ourselves in the work that we do, to remind us that we have a very tough job and we chose to do this. We have to talk about the struggle. We have to talk about how not easy it is to get to where we are. And also, even if we look like we're floating serenely in a pond, we need to model mistakes. We need to model making that error. That's why, like I gave you the choices earlier. Which of these cases would resonate? Whichever you chose, I would have focused on the fact that I made a mistake, because I think it's important, especially now with all the roles that I have, with all the titles that I have, to let you know that I'm not perfect. But in the words of La Vie Ajayi, I'm not the best. I don't have to be. I am enough. And that is earned because I worked really hard to get to where I am now.
I really appreciate this conversation. I think that oftentimes in, I would say, pre-residency medical training, we're so focused on the diagnosis. We're so
Yeah.
focused on the grieving patient. How are we going to deliver bad news to this person that lost their loved one or
Yeah.
that may be losing their own life? But we don't
Yeah.
consider how those things actually impact us. I know I'm a crybaby. I will be boo-hooing giving bad news, and I'm sorry, I can't help it. I'm just very emotional that way. We're just gonna have to cry together. But I didn't consider what it would be like for me on the back end to deal with it on my own. Like, if
Yeah.
you can make a mistake, if something happens and there is a
Yeah.
horrible outcome that maybe you could have avoided, maybe you couldn't have avoided, but either way, you have to deal with the fact that you probably feel guilty. I should have done this. I should have done that. Why did this not
Coulda, coulda, woulda.
trying to like process how you can get past that to not bring that same energy to your next patient.
Yeah.
This is a very important conversation that we're having.
Yeah. And also that sense of belonging, right? I mentioned earlier, autonomy, belonging, competence. When I advise folks when they're like, how do I choose when they do the rank list? I'm like, just remember when you were interviewing and talking to different people, can you see yourself? Imagine you just screwed up, or imagine a patient of yours just died at 2 a.m. Is there somebody that you can call? Is there somebody that you can like reach out to that actually will make you feel like they got your back? And when I chose Jacoby, it was like that, because I know that it's such a big program that somebody's going to be on call in the middle of the night. Somebody's going to be in the emergency department like all the time, right? And when I'm feeling lost, whether I'm in the wards or in the ED, there's somebody that I can talk to and I can feel comfortable sharing that with. And so I think that sense of belonging is very helpful. I didn't know that when I was looking for a job because I didn't know anybody who I was going to be working with. But I was very quick, and I'm glad. And I guess it was just part of my own like way of taking care of myself. I started surrounding myself with people who I really can trust and truly that I can like take that mask off and just be me. For me, that was Dr. Mitarai. For me, that was Dr. Garabagian. All these people that I get to talk to now and share my wins, my losses, and just the blah of our work, because not everything is like trauma 99 or major trauma or medical alerts in the emergency department. 95% of our job is to convince people that they're okay. And somewhere in that, we compromise ourselves with, do we feel like we're lying? Do we feel like we're pushing certain things because we don't know. We're dealing with uncertainty. And sometimes when we feel bad, we think that it's us. But I think that we have to step back a little bit also and acknowledge that it can be both. There's part of it that is us, that we have ways to grow and learn, but there's also the situation that is beyond our control. It's just a tough situation.
So, Dr. Alvarez, we have this thing that we do when we have our guests that we want you to complete the sentence based on the topic of discussion, okay? So, the culture of emergency medicine will truly support physician wellness when?
When we ourselves are comfortable accepting who we are, what we bring into the table, and owning what is within our scope of practice, and truly owning that.
I love that.
That's it.
That's it.
My gosh, I thought there was going to be more. I'm like, bring it on. I'm ready for this.
Mic drop. Mic drop. After
Mic drop. Pass the mic.
And speaking of pass the mic, so we do one last thing with our guests as well. We have each one of our guests ask a question to the next guest, and you don't know it could be anything, whatever that question is. It could be around this topic, it could be around anything. And then we ask the question that the previous guest asked to you.
All right.
Be thinking of a question. I'm going to ask you the question that our last guest asked. So,
Oh yeah, he's right.
So, besides for making the right diagnosis and treatment plans, what's the most important thing to improve inpatient outcomes?
Oh, I love that question. To be honest with you, I think it's a lot simpler. It's connecting with that patient. I can be the smartest person and the most technically savvy clinician out there, but if I piss off my patient, they're going to complain, which means that it actually ruins the therapeutic relationship. So finding ways to connect with patients, I think, is probably one of the most important things, because I have taken care of, I mean, working at Stanford, I've treated people with who were like former presidents of another country, right? And you would think that I would order like all the MRIs and all the like bells and whistle tests. Like, I remember this one case that we just had a nice conversation about what they're worried about, the disease that they have. And in the end, it was truly what I said, that if you were my family member, I wouldn't do any more tests. You have clearly done a lot of tests already. And I wish you the very best. If let me know if there's anybody here that I can connect you with, like consultants that I can like refer you to as an outpatient. But from the emergency medicine perspective, I have no idea what you have. And I don't know what else to do, right? Owning the I have no idea is a very powerful thing. And also, I don't really know what else to do because there's nothing more that we can do in the emergency department. It's important for them to just know that I'm being honest, but that I'm not abandoning them. I'm happy to connect you with the right people outside of the emergency department, because that is the best place for you.
Okay. And then lastly, as we wrap up our conversation today, what one or two lines do you feel our listeners, be them medical students, be them residents, be them attendings, or those that just may be EM curious that are listening, what's the one or two lines that you feel like they should really take away from this conversation?
You have worked really hard to get to where you are now. Don't forget the journey that you have gotten because simply of one person who questions you, or a mistake, or a bad outcome, or anything else that's happening right now. You are more than what those things are. And I'm echoing this important person who recently died. He's the director and founder of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, Dr. James Doty. He would say that each and every one of us has the capacity to be kind to others, and each and every one of us has the capacity to be kind to ourselves. And so when you're feeling like you're depleted and there's nothing more that you can give, know that that compassion is already within you, and you can always lean into that to take care of yourself, to extend the same kindness that you easily give to your loved ones and your patients, because we're so bad at that. Doctors in general are the worst when it comes to self-compassion.
Wow, I love that.
You see the faces we're making over here, like, yep.
No,
Like,
that's an odd thing when I'm reflecting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
My question for the next person that you interview, and they're very lucky for having this opportunity with you, is really, you brought up a lot of memories for me that I haven't thought about in a while. My question for them is, what's one thing that they're currently doing or they're hoping to do that aligns closely to their core values? And I challenge each and every one of you to think of that. And for me, it's going to be very easy. Ask me that question. I can give you so many different answers. But if you have to think for a while, I hope that's a reminder that perhaps it's a good time to sit, reflect, as part of self-compassion. Just check in with yourself. You deserve that just like everybody else.
It also reminds me to really think about what your core values are.
Yeah.
Wow. That may stump somebody up.
It would get me. It would get me. I'm focused on
You guys maybe tell us for everybody that you asked then, right? A lot of these things, you don't always have to have the answer, because sometimes that pause in the silence is the answer that like, oh, I have not thought about that in a while.
Dr. Alvarez, thank you so much for an honest and impactful conversation. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is the reminder that in medicine, we often chase this idea of being the best, perfect, if you will, measuring ourselves against impossible standards. But what truly matters is showing up with intention, with compassion, and with presence, and knowing that even when we don't feel like we're the best, we are still enough. And that perspective alone can be a powerful antidote to burnout. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of Critical Conversations, Medicine, Policy, and the Frontline Experience. The views and opinions expressed on Critical Conversations are those of the host and our guest, and do not necessarily reflect the views of our employers, educational institutions, affiliated organizations, sponsors, or advertisers. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only, and is not a substitution for professional, medical, or legal advice.